Right. Okay, here we are, everyone, and welcome to the, oh my goodness, I always forget. Is it the 19th? It's the 19th or the 20th?
I believe it's the 20th.
20th?
I think so.
Oh, wow. Is it? Anyway, it's up there. Episode of Dear Dr. Fantasy. I'll figure it out before I make the thumbnail and everything. And here as my very special guest is Steve from Steve Talks Books. And I am so very excited to have you here today, Steve. Thank you so much for honoring me with your presence here.
Well, thank you for the invite. I don't get invited on many channels, so it's always great to come by and visit.
Well, that seems a shame to me because I don't know anyone who invites more people to their channel than you. So it really seems weird. And of course, I am guilty too. This is the first time I think you're on my channel. Is that right?
I think so. I think it's just a matter of just circumstance that it worked out that way, though, because we've done a few, book discussions and stuff.
We've been together in a few discussions on your channel, which I've been very honored to be part of. Some of it's just conversations like this one, but also Malazan talks and that sort of thing. So it's been a blast for me, and I've really enjoyed the time I spent with you. So I hope this will not be the last time you can appear on my channel as well. So I owe you a few, I guess, right?
Oh no, it's just one of those things that things tend to work themselves out on their own.
Yeah, that's for sure. So I have lots of questions for you.
Okay.
And one of the things I do admire deeply about you and the channel that you've built is just how wonderfully inclusive you are and how supportive you are of not only other booktubers, but actually, I don't think I know anyone who does as much to shout out the self-published and indie press authors as you do. I mean, there are definitely people like Patrick out there who on a regular basis brings attention to people who are self-published and all that sort of thing. But I don't know if even Patrick does it as consistently as you do. Wow. And I'm wondering, is that something that you knew you were going to do when you started out the channel, or this has just evolved into your mission, or what exactly is how have you become the premier spot on YouTube for self-published and indie press authors?
Wow, you flatter me. I think it just kind of worked out that way. After one of the first authors who reached out to me was Jeff Lane when I started the channel, and he offered to give his book to all of us. We had a group that were reading a book every month, and he had offered to send us all ebooks to feature his book for the month. So we did that, and I read the book, and we got to know him a little bit. And one day I thought, what if I just talk to him, just have him on and just learn about his process or about how he wrote the book, or just really general. And so I felt comfortable enough with him that because he's really a great guy. And I asked him, would you ever mind coming on and just having a talk? And I had some questions prepared for him. I didn't really know what to ask at first because I didn't know anything much at all about the process of writing, or I've always just been a reader. So he came on and we had just a really great conversation, just a fun, just like someone coming over and just hanging out in the backyard and just having a chat. Nice. So had a really great time. And after that, I thought, I want to talk to more people. So I just started inviting people and people I thought might be interesting to talk to. And it just kind of, the ball started rolling and started to evolve. And now we have some really great, like a great series like Page Doing with Peel Stewart. And I've learned a ton about self-publishing from him. And he has lots of friends in the industry and who self-publish. And so that's opened a ton more doors for me, just authors that I wouldn't have probably had a chance to talk to otherwise. So it's just really, it's kind of snowballed, and I've been enjoying it so much that I keep doing it. So it just of evolved on its own. But yeah, I learned something from all of them. So it's always a thrill for me to get to know people. I mean, everyone has a story. We all have stories. No matter who you are, we all have some kind of story. And I want to hear as many stories as I can because you learn from them and you get to know people that way.
So true. Wiser words were never spoken. How did you get to know Peel Stewart? Is just a wonderful person. I mean, it doesn't take long to figure out what a warm human being he is. and an incredibly great conversation partner as well. I've watched him many times when you guys do the page chewing. And how did that happen? How did you and PL meet and embark on this partnership?
Well, I kept hearing about his book, and I noticed he was someone who I thought was open to coming on and chatting. So I try to be careful not to, someone, if I kind of get to see their interactions and see if it's a fit for me, because some people just aren't a good fit for what I do. I want to have a certain type of outlook, I guess you can say. I don't want anything too negative. I want to be uplifting and positive when I can. So he's one of the people who I reached out to, and before I even interviewed him, I wrote down, the last question I had was if he'd be willing to do a collaboration series with me, because I thought it might be a good combination of a reader and an author. Of course, Peel Stewart's a reader too, but bring those two different perspectives and interview creatives in the industry, in the community. So at the end, after we did our interview, I asked him, and thankfully he said yes. And before we knew it, we had a list of 30 guests who were lined up, and it just kind of blew up. And of course, now we have Taylor from Made Between the Pages. She's also
that was my next question was how did you get Taylor who's Made Between the Pages is how you might know her, but how did you get her to be involved?
Well, it's interesting. We had read Gunmetal Gods together, and we had a meetup with Zamil Akhtar, the author, with Lana from Lorne Lullabies, and we all just really hit it off. And we had a really great chemistry, and we got to know Taylor a little bit more from her interactions with us. And she came on as a guest, and we thought we have such a great chemistry. We just have this. I kind of relate it to people who've played sports, know that if you're playing basketball, you just have this nonverbal communication. You just know what some people are going to be doing, and you know where they're going to be. So you pass the ball knowing they're going to be in the spot you think they are. It's kind of like that with us. We just have that really great chemistry, and we kind of work off each other, and it's great when you find that kind of interaction. So we all really work great together, and thankfully they're both really wonderful people who I've learned a lot from.
Oh my goodness, yeah, they're both warm and just knowledgeable, and I completely agree with the chemistry you guys have going is just fantastic. And it's a pretty ideal number, I think, too, if you have an author and you have the three of you, and I think there's a lot less pressure that way when there's 4 people. You can kind of let people have their say, and of course, if you get too many more than that, it gets difficult for everyone to have their little bit, so 4 I think is a good number there. It's a good mix. But what do you think about that?
It's funny you mentioned that, because and Taylor hosting too, sometimes I just can't make certain dates, and she can, so that helps with guests.
That's wonderful. Yeah,
it gives us more flexibility. But as far as the groups, I used to really dislike group conversations because I felt like I wasn't giving people enough time. And when we started page chewing, Tim Hardy, the author, I had interviewed him by himself, and then we had the meetup with Holly Tinsley and PL. Nice. And afterwards, he told me I really felt a lot more comfortable because there was a group, and there was less pressure on me, because I felt like I don't have to be responsible for every question or to carry the conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
And it kind of set a light off on my head and thought, I wonder how many people feel that way. Maybe some people would feel more comfortable in a group and just kind of bounce off each other. So I've tried to be better at that, and try to be to give everyone their time. And it is a balance. Sometimes with a group, you want everyone to have a little bit of time. So spreading it around is almost like an art form sometimes.
It really is an art form. Yeah. Being a good host, and you are a wonderful host. It's tricky. It really is. I think a lot of times you don't realize until you're in that position how hard it is to make sure everybody gets the right, and you kind of have to interrupt sometimes maybe and create segues. Oh my goodness. The art of the segue. I think I should write a book about that.
It'd be a bestseller for sure.
Maybe. Oh dear. Well, I think you're doing a wonderful job. You're really you're doing some just wonderful work there, and I keep emphasizing that because I really think that it's one of the most important things we can do on Booktube. And it's wonderful to talk about the books that everybody's talking about. It's fun. There's a lot of buzz around, certain big popular authors and no, I do that myself. I talk about certain popular series and books and stuff. It's fun. But I also think that, and people might be wary of doing it because of the algorithm and all of that. So reviews and very focused book discussions don't necessarily get a whole ton of views. And I know because I made it my personal mission to have one self-published book a month among my reading.
Right.
And I know that, let's be honest here, those tend to be the lowest viewed videos on my channel, are the ones where I'm reviewing a self-published book. Even lower is when I interview a self-published author. I get even fewer views on that because that's a 1 or 2 hour conversation as opposed to a 10-minute review or something. So you and I both know that it's not a way to grow a huge channel to go out and talk to self-published authors and discuss their books. But I think we agree that it's one of the most important things we could do here, right?
Yeah, there's been a few times when I've made really good friends with some authors, and they've told me how much they appreciate having just a little bit of a chance to talk to people about their work. And even if I introduce it to one person puts it on their TBR, one person marks it to be read.
Yeah.
I mean, it's okay. And yeah, the algorithm it's something that we all have to kind of consider, right? I mean, you don't want to make content and nobody watch it. I mean, you want to interact and you want someone to watch it. You don't want to spend your time and then nobody cares, just crickets. So there's a balance there that you have to find to do things that you're passionate about, but also do it in a smart way that you can reach the most amount of people. So that's something that I've tried to be better about, that I've tried to be more conscious of that, of finding that balance.
Yeah. And it's tough enough as it is for self-published authors to find a voice or a platform, a means by which they can tell people about their stories, because there are some truly fantastic self-published books out there. I don't have to tell you that. you actually helped me find a couple. I mean, I was going to read Richard Nell's Ash and Sand trilogy anyway, and I haven't finished it, but I did read Kings of Paradise and absolutely loved it. And you're a person, I think I first heard about it on Mike's channel, on Mike's book reviews, but you're somebody who encouraged me to read Richard Nell's books. And I'm so grateful for that, because he's a very talented author with a really amazing story and one of the most iconic characters you'll find in fantasy. I know you agree, right?
Yeah.
The trilogy, Ash and Sand trilogy, is one of your favorites, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, I've reread it twice and hope to do it again with, when there's ever one of the people I've been bugging to read it, whenever they were ready to read it, I'd love to read it again and talk to them about it. So.
Well, I have to finish. When I finish the trilogy, we'll have to have a chat about it.
Sure.
So I wanted to do it this year. Let's see if I can sneak it in before the end of the year. It's really worthy of rereads as well, I'm sure. So yeah, that's a good example of one. And Patrick has also introduced me to some self-published authors. The Dreams of the Dying, for example, is a really good one that I don't know if you've read that one yet or not.
I haven't. Yeah, it's on the shelf, but I haven't read it yet.
Okay, Nicholas Lietzau. Very distinct from really, it is a fantasy book, but it's a book that is quite distinct in what Lietzau was trying to do with it. And he really does, in a fantasy story, tackle the theme of depression head on and does a really good job with it. I think it's one of the more, it's a standout for me in many ways. Yeah, and I'm actually reading a self-published book right now myself. My current read is very, very promising, actually. Really enjoying the read so far. I don't know if you know him, but the author's name is Vaughn Roycroft. And you probably don't, his book isn't even out yet. I got an advanced copy of the book. It's called The Severing Sun, and it's very, very, very good read so far. I'm about 150 pages in. So, but it's exciting, isn't it, to think, well, maybe I could be somebody who discovers, okay, that's probably the wrong word, but you find a self-published book, and this is kind of a dream of mine, really, is to find a self-published book that's really outstanding, and to, with my little platform, get the ball rolling, get maybe, you don't know, one little stone can cause an avalanche, so you could be one of those. Isn't that kind of, isn't that, I mean, for me anyway, that's a motivation, is I kind of want to be somebody who finds a book that deserves some attention, it deserves some love, and then just kind of nudge people along and be part of that, people discovering this book. Is that kind of part of why you do it too?
Definitely, yeah. It's almost it, and sometimes I wonder if I'm being like the snobby person at the record store who talks about how they loved a certain band before it was cool, and I saw them at this really
Yeah,
small
yeah,
venue.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
that's, I kind of want to be that guy, but I don't want to be that guy at the same time.
Right.
So, but no, of course, it'd be great to find the next, the next big book that blew up, and you be
Yeah.
part of that, and to be able to tell people about it so more people can enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, like I said, I think it's a really important thing that we do, is to shine that spotlight, and it may only result in, 10 book sales or whatever, but,
Yeah.
that's even, I think, as a writer, I think just to have one person read your book and respond to it in a way that's like, oh yeah, this person gets it, what I was trying to do here. This person appreciates what I'm doing. It's a really, really wonderful feeling, because as much as in many ways we write stories, not entirely in isolation, but largely in isolation, I don't feel like many of us would probably feel like the story is really alive until someone
Mhm.
else reads it, until someone else reacts to it. And that's got to be an incredible feeling for an author, right?
It has to be, and I can't relate to that feeling directly, but I think it must be so tough to write a book and you spend all this time on it, and then you wait for people to read it and to respond
Yeah.
to it.
Oh
I think
yeah.
Richard Nell said it's like telling a joke and waiting a year for the applause, for the laughter. So
It's funny.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's
Yeah.
must be really nerve wracking, and to put, and it's to, and this, it takes so much time and effort to write a book and all the things that go into it.
Oh
So
yeah.
spend all, you have so much investment, you want that response from, even if it's, I guess if it's negative, to a point, but
Yeah.
constructive.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want some kind of response. I think a response at all is what you're looking for, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And there just is, it's as much as the self-publishing industry has really blossomed. And there's been no other time like this, I think, where there
Mhm.
have been opportunities for people to get their stories out there. It's still a lot harder to get the platform, to get, that somebody, marketing your book. So it's tough, I'm sure, that for every success story you hear about among self-published authors, there still probably are millions of people who, haven't been able to reach that level of beyond where they have a few friends and family members buying their books. So social media is a big deal of obviously what we do
Mhm.
here, and then I think a lot of people are active on Twitter, and I don't know as much about Instagram because I'm not on it, but I assume it's similar to Twitter. I often wonder how much good, though. I feel like YouTube is a much more conducive platform to getting the word out about a book, or to getting people interested. Maybe I'm wrong. You tell me why I'm wrong. But to me, Twitter and Instagram are, there's just this sea of people out there, putting out tweets and whatever you call them on Instagram. And what do you call them? Posts or,
Posts, I guess. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
whatever they're called. And it's just all these voices, and there's just millions of them. And what can you say in a tweet about a book? Not a ton, honestly. I feel like Twitter and Instagram are more like places where you just sort of advertise. They're like little
Mhm.
advertisements. See, people are advertising themselves and advertising. And I also feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my impression is that on Twitter, it's a platform where people will easily gain thousands of followers, but I don't know how meaningful that is on Twitter. So, for example, you'll see somebody with 10,000, 20,000 followers put out a tweet, and like 5 people like the tweet. So, do you know what I'm saying? Because
Oh yeah.
there's a culture on Twitter of, uh, on YouTube, it used to be called sub for sub, right? It's
Mhm.
where you sub to me, I'll sub to you, and then I'll ignore all your content. So what's the good of that?
Yeah.
It actually hurts you in a way on YouTube if you have a bunch of subs who don't ever watch your content. And whereas I think on Twitter, it's almost encouraged, at least from what I've seen in the writing community, it seems like there's a sort of an understanding that, okay, you follow me and I'll follow you and we can get bigger that way. But how much good do you think it does on Twitter and Instagram if you have thousands of followers who don't actually see your tweets because they never look at them?
Social media it's so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
The algorithms. Instagram, I don't get it either. So I don't
Okay,
use
good. So
Instagram.
I'm not alone.
It's just it doesn't it's just not the format that I enjoy. But as far as Twitter goes, yeah, you're right. And there are some people who have thousands of followers and there's no interaction. So
Right.
when people ask, I'm trying to reach X amount of followers, help me out, it doesn't do any good. I mean, you want the interaction, you want to grow organically, not
Right.
just because with the algorithm, if you're not getting interactions, then no one else will see you. Even
Yeah.
if you're following people, you're not going to see everyone you follow. It's just who the algorithm promotes or who
Yeah.
pays to get promoted.
And I see tweets from people I don't follow.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But I feel like here on YouTube, there's more meaningful. Like I would rather have 1,000 followers on YouTube than 100,000 on Twitter, where I don't feel like there's just a lot of real depth to it. Whereas you can get real depth, you can get real connections, a real sense of actual community on YouTube. Like there are people who I've never seen in the world whom I consider friends because they comment all the time and I hear from them and it's like we share our thoughts. And then people like you who I haven't met in the real world, but I feel like you're a friend because
Yeah.
we've had conversations together about stuff we're interested in, passionate about. I don't think that happens on Twitter and Instagram. Or am I just being ignorant about those platforms?
No, I don't. I think even less on Instagram. One of the things I didn't like about Instagram is there's no interaction. There's not a place to really talk. Even just
Yeah.
the comments section is it feels like a one-way interaction for everyone. And
Right.
Twitter in some cases is like that too. But I think with Twitter you have this much space to say what you want to say, and I'm just not good
Right.
at quick like one-liners. Just not what I'm. That's not me. So I'm not good at that. So Twitter sometimes can be a little daunting, but you only have limited space there too. I
Yeah.
wonder about our attention spans. And I think that's when YouTube really pays off because there's a time investment. So if I watch your video for 10, 15, 20 minutes, I'm investing my time and to interact with you, to hear what you think. And I feel closer to you. I get to know you, or at least you feel like we get to know each other and there's a bond we form there, even though you may never meet someone
Right.
in person or maybe never even see their face. Like you were saying, the interactions, the comments, and the meaningful those interactions are a lot more meaningful than liking and retweeting something or responding
Right.
one sentence to a picture you post.
Yeah.
That to me is more meaningful, and that's when you start to build that community and not just it's not as you know it's more meaningful to me to have people who
Yeah.
invest time and effort into what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
that really, and then we all support each other too, so that builds. And talks like this, it's we get that connection and that interaction, not just a x amount of characters and we're done.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's so hard to, and I see these big long threads on Twitter with 12 different posts, and it's like, just start a blog and tell me what you think or do something.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair point. Yeah. And I don't know about TikTok, or as old people like me sometimes refer to it, TikTok. But I assume that TikTok is more along the lines of Twitter and Instagram because I know it's videos, right? But it's usually like 10-second videos or whatever. I might be misjudging TikTok too, but I have the impression that it's, again, a more shallow platform, shallow in terms of the type of content platform, less conducive. Is there a platform like YouTube? Like, is there a place like Booktube anywhere else where people are really genuinely, I think, feel like part of a community where you're having these conversations about books and people are watching 1 or 2 hour long videos and telling you how meaningful it is for them to be able to come home from work and listen to people talk about the books they're passionate about. Is there another community like this anywhere?
I don't think so. Not on one platform, because I know on podcasts it's a little bit different because there's not a place for comments really.
Yeah.
A place for the listener, you can listen. It's almost like that feels like a one-way street too, because I'll put a podcast out and you don't hear any responses from it. Usually you don't hear much, you don't have
Right.
that feedback, but on YouTube there's a comment section. So in that sense, I don't know that there's another platform quite like YouTube with
Yeah.
the long form content that a lot of us are doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't think so. I know there are platforms where people have messages back and forth. Like, what's the one where they had the stabbies?
Reddit,
Reddit.
right?
Yeah, that's
Reddit.
it.
Yeah.
Reddit. Uh, that's a platform where people do interact, I think,
Mhm.
right? But there are no
Yes.
video. It's not a video platform.
No, I think you can share your videos there depending on the section, but yeah, it's mostly like it's so strange to me. It seems like I don't know, Reddit seems like an outdated. It seems I have flashbacks from the 90s when I go there, just because the layout and the structure, it's just
Yeah.
strange. Yeah, but yeah, there is a back and forth there, but not you can't. It's not as quite to the level that YouTube is.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't joined Reddit, so I don't know what it's like, but I assume there are communities, sub-communities within Reddit,
Mhm.
and you probably get to know people there. And there's also Discord, I guess, right? Discord, again, not videos, but people interacting a lot with each other. And I'm a complete noob when it comes to Discord as well, but I know what it is, and I think I know what you do there, more or less, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you used like MIRC back in the late 90s, if you were
No.
in that scene. Yeah, it reminds me of like an old 90s chat room is what it reminds me of. It's really
Okay.
popular. A lot of people enjoy it. I just don't have the time for it. I just don't have the
Yeah.
time to be scrolling through and so many, it just gets a little bit overwhelming. It just
Yeah.
there's only so much time in the day. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was just trying to think. I really don't think there's anything, and please, anyone who wants to in the comments, tell me what, that I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anything quite like YouTube in our corner of it that we always call Booktube. I don't think there's anything like this.
I think you can do video and audio on Discord, but I don't know
Okay.
if there's a length on videos or exactly how it works, but I know you can do it. I
Oh, I
just don't
didn't
know
know
if
that.
it's
Okay.
quite on the
Okay.
level. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, here we are, and it's a good place to be, a good place to have landed, I think. So I'm going to be bugging you about what you're reading, but before we talk about what you're reading these days, I really would like to get a sense of, where did Steve come from here? What is the journey, the story journey of Steve? In other words, you are what you read, Steve. So
Very.
what are some of the stories that you consider to be foundational for you, or that have had a big impact on you in your life, and that have led you to this point where you're enough of a lover of storytelling to be here on YouTube?
Hmm. I think one of the stories that really kind of opened my eyes to what the possibilities were is Jurassic Park. I think a lot of people in my
Michael
age group,
Crichton, the book.
yeah, yeah,
Interesting. Okay.
and that once you go down that rabbit hole, there's so much work of his that I think it was it was with the movie out, and it kind of spurred a lot of people to read and be curious about reading. So that's kind of one of the reasons that I really enjoyed reading. But I also used to read a lot of comic books. I
Uh-huh.
read comic books for long. It got into graphic novels and the indie scene there, and the indie comic book scene with Image and Top Cow and all these other. And of course, it started to become like The Walking Dead was adapted, and I was one of those people who was reading The Walking Dead, so I had that cool feeling like,
You were way beyond Marvel and DC. You
oh
were
yeah.
really into the nitty gritty of the comic book scene there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm not really interested in capes and cowls, and that just didn't interest me. But there's so many other great stories, and it reminds me of the indie scene that we're seeing now with books. And there's just so many great stories that are being told. So that's what kind of set me on the path. And it wasn't until our family we were all buying Kindles for Christmas, and we started looking up Kindle reviews.
Okay.
And of course, I found Mike and Mike's book reviews, and that led me down a rabbit hole of, Slowly Read. And I didn't realize, watching Slowly Read's videos, that there were books like Priest of Bones,
Yeah.
or this what is Grimdark? What is this dark fantasy? Because I'd never read fantasy before I
Yeah, well,
started the channel.
Mark is the Slowly Read fellow, and I always called him the guru of Grimdark. I don't know if he actually enjoyed me calling him that, but yeah, he knows a lot about that particular subgenre in fantasy, and he's the guy. He's the go-to guy, I think, when it comes to that stuff, for sure. Could we go back for a second though, because I'm very curious. You talked about this indie comic book scene. I know next to nothing. I considered myself a comic book reader when I was young, and back in the late 70s and to the mid 80s. I collected comic books, but just Marvel and DC. I didn't go beyond that. So tell me a little bit more. What are some of the great series that you found in this indie scene? I really know nothing, so you have to explain it to like a baby here. So,
well, how far back do you want to go? Do you want to go with the indie scene? Back to the
like with you. I mean, what were some of the ones that you really liked?
Well, when I think part of it is that Image, the publishing company, started with a bunch of artists and writers back in the late 90s that created their own imprint.
Mid to late 90s.
Yeah, with Image Comics, and that's kind of what started that scene, and it just exploded from there. But while I was reading The Walking Dead before the adaptation started, so I was on that bandwagon of I knew about it before it was cool.
Yeah,
that's a whole nother conversation about the adaptation. But there's books like The Walking Dead, and there was but way back there, Spawn was one of the first books that kind of opened everyone's eyes to what the possibilities were. And there's lots of books like gosh, I'm drawing a blank now that I'm thinking about it. But
well, I know it's DC, but the Sandman, was that something you got into as well back?
Yeah, the darker things like Sandman, and of course like Hellblazer from Garth Ennis was another big one. Kind of the darker side, the side that was in the back of the store, not the front of the store kind of thing, is what I've always enjoyed. Not behind the curtain, just in the back of the store. So
right. Not behind the curtain.
Too crazy. Yeah, not behind the curtain. But there's also Invincible by Robert Kirkman. That's a great superhero story that I thought just a really, really terrific story that Robert Kirkman told. He's the author of The Walking Dead too. But there's horror comics that I was reading, lots of great horror comics, and I think that's what kind of led me into the darker side of the darker stories that I always kind of enjoyed more than the other side. I still enjoy the other side, but that's why I kind of veer towards the dark and the gritty and the depressing stuff. Maybe that's maybe I'm just a miserable human being, but yeah.
I think anybody who knows you would describe you as the opposite of miserable, but okay. And that's a funny thing. A lot of people I know who like the grimdark, who like the, as you described it, the grittier stuff, they're such lovely people. I've found, time and time again, that and that's an interesting phenomenon too, I think. But nevertheless, that sounds really cool. And while we're on this, I'm going to get back to your reading journey in a moment, but I do want to get your opinion on, have you watched the Sandman, the TV series?
I haven't, and I haven't because I keep hearing that it may not be renewed for a second season.
Oh no.
So I'm afraid. Yeah, I'm afraid to get invested in it, not continue. I'll watch it, but it's
still worth watching the first season. Yeah. I'm like 6 episodes in, and I bought the graphic novels because I thought, oh, this is cool. I got to read the source material. So I have a very high opinion of the Sandman, the TV series, which is actually, as much as I am actually enjoying Rings of Power, and I expect I will enjoy House of the Dragon, I'm still going to say that I bet you the best fantasy TV series of 2022 for me is probably going to end up being the Sandman. But,
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's high praise.
I mean, to me, people can argue on that one if they want, but and I haven't watched House of the Dragon yet. I have my ears open and I'm hearing stuff about it, and it's mostly positive, definitely mostly positive from what I'm hearing. And I tend to have a slightly rosier picture of Rings of Power than most people, I think, at this point. And I have a feeling that show is going to continue to get better, even. So we'll see, but we shall
Hope
see.
so.
But the Sandman, yeah, check it out, man, because I think you will be impressed with it. I think you'll find it. I know AP Canavan, you know AP.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
Big fan of the graphic novels, the Sandman, and he's
Hmm.
even done like actual like academic work on this, so he knows this back and
Oh.
forth. Yeah, yeah. And I think he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he wrote his master's thesis on the Sandman.
Oh, wow.
And so that not his PhD dissertation, that's a different thing, but his master's thesis. So he knows this and he loves the TV show.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's
Oh,
an endorsement, I think, right there. So
yeah, I think so.
yeah. So yeah, all right. Well, I can't get your opinion on it because you haven't watched it yet, but I can tell you, go ahead, go for it. Even
Yeah.
if that would be tragic if they didn't renew it. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I feel like that's the most successful of these three shows, and it had the lowest budget, I believe, of the three.
Well, I think Rings of Power spent $1 billion, so it's tough
Have to
to
compete with
beat it. But
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
but Netflix is so weird, aren't they? Because they spend a lot of money on this adaptation. It's all the critics and the viewers rave about it, but if it doesn't meet certain benchmarks for their subscriptions or for
Hmm.
growing the service, then they cancel it, even if it's a series that everyone loves. So it's really weird that they're really 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 unforgiving about that. Even if
Strikes me
this
that
people
could
love
be a
it.
losing strategy in the long term, because
Yeah.
how many great films did very poorly in the beginning and then became sort of like cult classics, you know? How many great films have done that? How many great even television series were at first very even Game of Thrones got a lot of flack in its first season. And if
Hmm.
HBO has said, "Oh, well, lots of fans don't like this, I guess we'll just can it." Boy, they would have lost out, I guess, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, that I think it changed a lot. And Game of Thrones was another thing that I didn't know. There was fantasy books like this that told these kind
Yeah,
of stories.
yeah,
So I think it opened a lot of people's eyes to it. And yeah, it's I think the better these fantasy series do, the better it is for all of us, because that means that they'll option more stories and
exactly.
we'll get more content. So if you don't enjoy it, it's fine. But
Yeah,
if you let the people who enjoy it, and just wish it luck.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has to watch or enjoy a series, but I'm not going to be someone who's going to insist that you have to hate this because I hate it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, it makes me wonder too about just social media and the way that we communicate now. If there are movies or books that may in the past may have blown up after their release that don't, because of all the negativity. So you wonder if people that may have watched it or may have invested time in it don't, because of the Rotten Tomatoes score or whatever it is, that people
Yeah.
just don't even give it a try. Because a lot of these older movies that something like The Sandlot was panned by everybody. Nobody liked that movie, but
Hmm.
it grew a following, and people now
What I
it's
mean.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly what I mean. Yeah. And there are plenty of examples of that sort of thing. And I don't know how much I trust Rotten Tomatoes. I mean, I do mostly, but I think there are certain movies and television series that become lightning rods, and you get people who are just going there to deliberately skew the ratings one way or another. So I don't know, it is, I guess, a sort of they have the popular opinion and they have the critics, right? And I'm glad, actually. I think that's smart that they separate the two, and sometimes it's telling if there is a difference there. But yeah, it's democracy is messy, I guess.
It is, isn't it? And I wonder sometimes about the critics scores, because if they have a negative review of something, sometimes
Yeah.
the studio cannot give them the access that they had before. So you wonder if that skews ratings in that on that side of it.
Yeah, there is that too. And sometimes I trust the popular opinion more than I trust the critical opinion, so it can go
Yeah,
either way.
yeah.
It really can. But yeah, it's still, I think, a useful tool. I'll go there sometimes and check out what's going on the tomato meter and all that.
Yeah.
So,
But it is telling though to see the balance between the two.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's get back though. I feel like we were sort of midway or somewhere along the line of your reading journey. So we had gotten to the point where you were starting to find out about books, I think, and you had discovered a few Booktube channels.
Yeah, and I found this whole corner of YouTube that we now know as Booktube. I had no idea it existed either, and
Yeah.
I wanted to. One of my goals for the year was to get away from digital things, from screens, and from, I spent a lot of time on a computer at work, and I wanted to get away from that. So I wanted to read more and get away from phone screens or tablets or whatever. So I thought it was a great way for me to hold myself accountable too whenever I would start something I wanted to. And plus I wanted the interaction of talking to people and to making new friends who had similar interests. So
Yeah.
I don't know what what was the thing that kind of set me over the edge to start a channel, but
Huh.
I'm glad I did. It's been just an amazing experience to meet so many wonderful people, and I've been introduced to a lot of books that I would have never probably known about. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've found books that I've really enjoyed that I didn't know these kind of stories were told, because I didn't know much about fantasy before I started the channel. I
Huh.
never really read a fantasy book. I read science fiction and nonfiction. So it's been quite the journey for me to open my eyes to a whole nother world that I would have never known otherwise.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm awfully glad you started your channel too. So yeah, I mean it's amazing how much we gain from this platform and how many books we read because of the people we've interacted with here, and how that broadens us as readers as well. It's wonderful. I have a list of books that I will never ever be able to finish as a result of interacting here, and that's a good problem, I think. Right, that's a problem I think most of us who are here have, is that we have a TBR that's impossible to conquer.
Yeah, I think that's part of the fun in a way, and to not let it get overwhelming. But it's, I get weird looks when people ask me, when do you plan to read it? And I thought, well, probably in February or March. And they, February or March, like what, why so far
Of
away?
2025.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm so you kind of plan out your months, and I never really understood that until you experience it. It just, these things take time. And with Booktube and the discussions, I've learned so much about storytelling, and I've learned from everyone that we have discussions with. When we had the Milazan discussions, I learned a ton about those books, and I love that you can read something and you think you understand it, and you get a whole different perspective, and it shines a whole different light on what you've experienced. And
Yeah,
because the way that we interpret a book is not only our personalities, our experiences, it's also just our state of mind at the time that we're reading it.
that's so
Maybe
true.
going through a stressful time you have a stressful work, a period at work, and you may see a story differently than if you did when you have a smooth,
Yeah.
smooth week at work. So
Oh yeah.
there's so many different variables, and to get so many different perspectives, it opens doors, and it makes you see things totally differently too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to think it through, to review it, or to tell people about it, you want to give them some insight into it, and that's also something that you have to
Yeah.
keep in mind while reading, and kind of engage with the writing, and to understand it, or to try to.
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah, it is a tricky thing to review a book and feel like you're bringing something to someone else's experience of the book. It takes some real thought to be able to do that, especially if you're trying to do a non-spoiler review, which is, I mean, again, algorithm or whatever, people tend to prefer non-spoiler over spoiler because they don't want to be spoiled, and they want to hear, do I want to read this book? Yeah, but the discussions are so wonderful. Once you've read a book and you're ready to hear more about it and have your ideas about it, be exposed to other people's ideas about it.
Mhm.
And then suddenly you think of this book in a different way, and that's amazing. And to gain insights, as you said, from authors and other people who are passionate about books here on this platform, wonderful. A good example being the chat we had the other day with Stephen Erickson and Joanna and Jimmy. You know, that was really fun. And he read the excerpt from the book he's working on, the second book in the Witness trilogy. That was really cool, right? Wasn't that cool? Did you know he was going to do that?
I had no idea. We were all surprised, but no, I had no idea. And that was such a treat to hear something that's never been shared before, and to get that front seat.
Yeah, you got a real scoop there. You got a real scoop.
Yeah, no idea, but it's one of those moments you just want to close your eyes and enjoy it, and just, forget you're on a camera somewhere on the internet. So yeah, you kind of get lost in it.
Yeah, and we got to learn about butt crow. So
yeah, it's
butt crow.
It's butt crow's world. We're just living in it. Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, what a guy. I mean, Stephen Erickson, I haven't made a secret of the fact that he's my favorite author now, and just tremendous. And it is wonderful to hear him talk about his writing. And he has these ongoing conversations with AP on A Critical Dragon as well, which I think are just gold, where they insist that it's not a master class or anything like that. And yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, whatever.
It's a master class. and maybe it's not strictly tightly organized, but there are so many insights you can gain into the writing process. And even if you're not somebody who wants to write, even if you think I'm never going to write anything, you learn a lot about books and the way they work, and you become, I think, not just a better reader. You become a reader who enjoys more variety of books as you gain insights into how stories work. I think you gain an appreciation of what's you're reading, and sometimes it can even help you to connect to a story that you might not have otherwise. Where you might have been, without knowing what you've learned here on this platform, you might be like, this is boring, right? But then when you hear Stephen Erickson talking about something about, narrative strategy or character work or something like that, and you realize what you're reading here, you think, oh, wow, this is actually interesting. You know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. I have no interest in ever writing. I just not something I don't think I'd ever try to, but yeah, you learn a ton about, you kind of see little tricks when they, here and there when you read it, and you start to understand why certain decisions are made, and why certain ones aren't. I kind of relate it to, if you're a music buff, you want to learn how music is mixed and how they, bring all the different instruments together, and how they, the whole process of how it gets from the artist to our ears. Or if you're a movie buff, how do they do certain special effects, or how do they present certain characters, or the colors that are used in certain scenes, how that relates to the character's journey. That's all part of it. And when you get to know how stories are told, you can understand it and appreciate them better. Even though I have no interest in ever writing, I still, little things I'm picking up that I wouldn't have before. And I've learned a ton. I mean, AP's videos, he could charge for those. I mean, that's,
you could. Yeah.
It could be an online course that they sell. So I know I'd buy it, but you just learn so much from them, and it's incredible that it's free on the internet, that they do it with their own free time, just to share their knowledge, and that's incredible to me.
Yeah, I agree. Of course, you can always buy AP a cup of coffee on his channel, I guess, right?
Yeah,
but
I'll buy some Red Bulls. Yeah,
I don't know if he needs more coffee. I think he's got enough energy as it is, but yeah.
Yeah, he's whenever we have chats, we try to kind of wrap up early to, so he can get to bed. We try and respect his time, and we always end up talking for another 2 hours, 3 hours after that. And he's like, I better go to bed. It's almost 5, or it's 5 in the morning for me, so I should go to bed.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but he had such passion. Yeah, such passion, and it just you can't help but get wrapped up in his enthusiasm and passion.
Oh my goodness, tell me about it. I mean, the fact that I've been able to read the Malazan Book of the Fallen and novels of the Malazan Empire along with him and discuss each book. We're on the last. We got to do Crippled God and Assail, and it'll be that particular. The that particular read together will be done. And it's like, wow, man, I don't know if I've ever learned so much in the process of reading a series. It's been really a wonderful, wonderful experience. So yeah, and that's something that we all know, we've done read-alongs, and it's so much more fun to read these things with our friends and talk about them and have them open up in so many wonderful ways in the process, don't you think?
Oh yeah, and that's something that happened the last few months. We started reading the Prince of Nothing trilogy with some friends, and
Yeah,
Daniel and Katerina, we started reading that together. Neither
yeah.
of them have channels. They just wanted to talk about the books.
Oh, cool.
So we meet every Friday, and that whole process of breaking it down in pieces, part by part, it really made me slow down and take my time and look for things, because I wanted to bring something fun to the conversation and
Yeah,
to,
yeah,
so that's another thing that I've been trying to do lately, is just relax and just enjoy it, and don't try to, we all have books we want to read, but just soak it up and be, enjoy it, and don't try to rush through it. You might miss something that you really appreciate about the story.
yeah. That's one of the most poorly kept secrets about teaching, is that you don't really know a particular thing until you have to teach it.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
study it for years, but it's only when you have to teach it that you really grasp it, I think, or that you begin to anyway, that you
Mhm.
really, you're starting the process of really grasping something. And it's similar, I think, when you're going to be in a discussion and it's going to be recorded, and hundreds or thousands of people are going to watch. You feel like, I think I better have something to say here. Right?
Yeah, you don't want to be on the spot and then not know what's, I miss something that, you don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in that way, I really do think that being a booktuber is a little bit like being a teacher, yeah.
Yeah, and I think being a teacher too, you learn. I used to be a trainer, so I used to learn a lot when I trained people,
Cool.
because they would ask, someone day one on the job would ask me questions that I never thought of before, and I would
Yeah.
learn some. I don't know, but let me find out. And
Yes,
you see
exactly.
things from another perspective, and they have questions that you never thought of. It's just the way things are done, but then you see a different perspective, and they have insights, having that fresh perspective that you may not have ever considered. And
Yeah.
being a teacher, you can recognize those teaching moments. I'm sure you've had those experiences where you even if it's in your personal life, there's a moment that presents itself that you can help someone understand something better, or to help them along with what's their journey. And that's just a great feeling and to recognize those moments, those opportunities to share your knowledge.
So that you said it beautifully. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I am a teacher,
Mhm.
and to have my students sometimes will say things like, well, I never really liked English before, but after this class, I think I might actually read,
Oh wow.
for pleasure. Or I've gotten really beautiful. I mean, my students can be so nice and generous with their comments at the end of a semester, and it really does help us to know that we've helped somebody, because there are days when you're like, why am I doing this, and then a student says thank you, or just says, this really helped me understand this story, and this story really connected with me, and then you realize, oh, that's why I'm doing this, right?
Yeah,
And I
those
think
are
you
great
get a
moments.
similar thing. You get a similar thing here for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and whenever someone says, "I picked up this book because you loved it," it's exciting, but it's also
A little bit
nerve-wracking.
nerve-wracking. Yeah. You're like, oh, I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, because you
Yeah.
don't ever want them to say, "Well, I read it, but I hated it," or "I read it, but I DNF'd it 10% in," or whatever. So
Yeah.
it's you're excited, but I really hope they enjoy it the way I did, or get something out of it.
Yeah. It's a risk. It's a risk. And I think people do get a sense, like you said before, like these are the types of books that I like, and these are the types of stories that I find speak to me the most.
Hmm.
And I think anyone who follows your channel gets a sense of that, right? So they kind of know what to expect. If you're somebody who likes, I don't know, say romance, and you look at Steve's channel, and he's reading like all grimdark stuff, and you know what I mean? And you can't just say to Steve, I'm really disappointed in your recommendations. There's not a single romantic scene here in this book.
Yeah, I think may not be your cup of tea. Yeah.
Right.
It's funny you mentioned that because I've noticed there is more romance being integrated into fantasy. Have you noticed
Yeah.
that?
Um,
Or at least more than there has been before. It seems like it's kind of a trend that's they're more of a blend.
you might be right. Yeah. I mean, if you look at certain classical fantasy like Tolkien, there's a tiny bit of romance in there, but not much. There's, Arwen hardly even appears in. If you only know Lord of the Rings through the films, you think Arwen is a big character. She's not. In the books, she's hardly there at all. She's really more in the appendices than
Mm.
anywhere. Um, and then the real one that's there is Eowyn and Faramir. That's there, but it's pretty small thread in there. So that's probably a good example of when we say romance. I mean, there's big R romance in Lord of the Rings. It's highly romantic in some ways. Tolkien inherited a lot from the Romantics, after all, but there's no like lovey-dovey stuff, right?
Yeah.
So you mean lovey-dovey stuff, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's too lovey-dovey, but it's some of it varies on that side. I think it's great to have have something different for everyone. If you're looking for that, then there's
Yeah.
options. It's great having options.
Part of
You know,
life, right?
yeah,
I mean, romance is part of life.
yeah.
So it's something that fantasy authors should have sometimes. Um,
If it fits the story, yeah, sure.
if it fits the story. Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, yeah. But yeah, if it's there and it's handled well, why not? I say.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Even in something like Kings of Paradise, there's a little bit of romance in it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd be so nervous to write romance though. You'd just to get that right, to be tough.
Yeah. I have a feeling it's probably hard to pull off a good romance, I would guess, in a fantasy novel or as a romance novel itself.
Mhm.
I'm sure there are tons of really bad ones, and, and then it's just like with any genre, I'm sure there's got to be some really good ones. I'm pretty ignorant though, I confess, but
Yeah, me too. I did meet an author. I went to StokerCon in Denver, um, and there was an author there, a horror author, who we were having breakfast with, and he said he makes his most money ghostwriting romance books.
oh, no kidding, huh?
Yeah, he said he pumps them out, and he's a ghostwriter. Of course, he couldn't say who for, but he just writes romance books, just pumps them out, and has his kind of a template he uses for each story, and just changes names and dates and
Oh,
the third act breakup, and he pumps them out, and he makes his most money from that. It funds his horror writing, so it works out for him.
I guess. I mean, who am I to judge? I suppose, but um, it just seems like it could be kind of soulless, but
Yeah.
like factory made. I mean, it sounds like there's going to be a point where you could just have a computer do that. You wouldn't need a person if it's that formulaic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you're just following a pattern, you know, somebody's going to write a code, to have a computer just churn out formulaic genre fiction, I suppose. But that's
They can hear
scary.
you. Yeah, they can hear you. They're gonna you give them the idea. Yeah, it's someone's reading it. I guess someone's enjoying it. So
You know what? See, if somebody should write a book about a society where books are written by AI, right? Has it been done yet? Somebody must know a book like that.
don't
Stories are
not that I
written
know
by
of.
computers, not
Hmm.
people. Yeah.
I
And
think yeah.
the hero's got to be, of course, an author,
Yeah.
a writer who's going to lead the revolution, right?
Just imagine the power that AI would have if an AI wrote every story. If a computer wrote every story, the you can change society in any way you wanted to by
Yeah.
portraying certain types of people or a certain person, the hero in every story or the villain. So you can the way that would change everyday life over time would be
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Interesting.
I just gave somebody a brilliant idea for a novel. It's kind of like The Matrix, only super nerdy.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone would Frodo for president. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so what are you reading these days?
Oh, well, I am reading. where I'm reading, like mentioned the Warrior Prophet. We're doing a chapter by
Nice.
chapter
Nice.
weekly, and I'm about to start the Grace of Kings.
Ooh, nice. That's one
Mhm.
on my radar for sure. I've heard Jimmy, for example, talk it up a lot. And who else has been talking up that one? Well,
Uh,
Patrick, of course.
yeah, yeah, I know Taylor really loves it, and Yolene really loves that
Oh,
book.
Yolene too. Okay.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, usually whenever Yolene or Taylor would tell me that I think you'll really like this, then it's like, okay, I'll try it. I trust you because they know what I like. But
I know you.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, we're starting a group read for it, so we'll have a couple of discussions. But I
Cool.
interviewed Ken Liu for Page Chewing with Taylor,
Yeah. I
and
saw
he
that.
is incredible. I mean,
He is so smart.
yeah,
Yeah. He's just very well spoken and so smart. And I feel like he's somebody I could learn a lot from. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's just amazing. Just so much, there's certain people you talk to that, like AP or yourself, or with Steven Erickson or Jimmy or Joanna, and you listen to them talk and you kind of get lost, and you forget that you have to ask them another question, or you have to engage with them
Uh,
again, just because you get so wrapped up in what they're saying that you just kind of zone out for a minute. So it's
yeah.
tough sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I'm gonna have to read it someday. It's on the list. It's there. It probably would happen early next year to be realistic about it. But R. Scott Baker, I'm gonna start much sooner. Actually, I had resolved to read The Darkness That Comes Before during the summer. How many days of summer do we have left? Ooh.
Not many. Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm gonna make it, but early fall for sure, because I've got my current read, The Severing Sun. That's a self-published book. And then I'm starting some manga. Actually, I'm reading the Vinland Saga.
Oh, cool.
And that I can do in a day. I mean, one of the books I can do in a day. And they're fun. So far, I'm having a lot of fun with that.
Hmm.
And then what else do I have? Probably I'm either going to finish the Dark Tower series. I have the last book, The Dark Tower, or I'm gonna start the Darkness That Comes Before. One or the I'll do the one first, the other next. So
Hmm.
I will get to it soon. Yeah. Have you read Dark Tower?
I I stopped at the Wizarding Glass.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can't say too much without spoiling it, but there were
Yeah.
some decisions that were made that just wasn't for me. That just didn't seemed a little goofy, and
Uh-huh.
I know why it works for some people, but it
Yeah.
just didn't work. It just wasn't my cup of tea.
Okay. Yeah, it works for me. I loved Wizard and Glass. I thought it was just at the time my favorite. And I will see which ends up being my favorite. But I'm actually one of those weirdos who loved Song of Susanna. So we'll see what happens with the Dark Tower, but I feel like it's going to be more and bigger like the Song of Susanna. So I
Mm.
feel like I'm probably going to like the last book. So I'm really actually excited to finish that series. There's a tiny part of me though that always is like, do I really want to finish the series? Because that'll be kind of a bummer too, right?
Yeah, yeah, I do. My wife would read the series, and I told her, "Well, just spoil it for me because I'm not going to read it." So when she explained it to me, it did. I think you're in for a treat. So I
Okay.
think when she did spoil it for me, I did think I should have just kept reading. So,
Oh no. Well, you still can. I mean, you'll
yeah,
just know where it's going, I guess, right?
yeah,
I mean, on the topic of spoilers, I think people, and I have no problem. I try to be respectful on this
mm,
platform because I know it's a big deal. You don't want to accidentally spoil something for somebody. I mean, you don't. You don't want to
yeah,
diminish someone's experience. And if that aspect of reading is a big deal for someone, then yeah, I mean I get that.
mm,
But I'm somebody actually who, and I might be in the minority here, but I don't mind spoilers much at all, to tell you the truth.
mm,
I mean, don't do it because we're not doing spoilers on Dear Dr. Fantasy, but if you
yeah,
told me the end of the Dark Tower series, I'd be like, huh. And then I'd go read it and I'd be fine, you know. Plus, Stephen King pretty much spoils his books anyway, constantly. That's the kind of writer he is. He's like, he tells you, and then that was the last time they saw each other alive. And then, you're like,
yeah,
wait, what? You just told me, you
yeah.
know. So he does that stuff all the time. But I actually don't think being spoiled is that bad, for me at least. I don't feel like I mind too much when something is, and people are very respectful here because other people are much more sensitive, obviously, to that sort of thing than I am. But yeah, AP was talking once about how there are even studies to suggest that people get more out of a read if they've been spoiled. So, and I bet you know somebody, and I do, my mother and my wife, for example, will often flip to the end of the book, read the ending,
Wow.
and then go back to the middle where they were. Do you know someone like that?
I don't know if I do.
Oh, okay.
It's almost blasphemous, Philip, to do that. I don't know.
I know, right? I mean, to me, so I don't do that. I don't mind being spoiled, but I never go to the end and read the ending and then go back to the middle and finish the book. But I know people who do it, and they seem completely engaged through the whole thing. So are they onto something that the rest of us don't know?
Maybe. I think maybe if you know how it ends, that you can, it's easier for you to break down the story and to kind of see the tricks that he used and the directions it takes and the choices it makes. Maybe that gives you a better understanding of what the author is trying to do. But yeah, it's interesting. I do my best to stay away from spoilers just because I don't want to know anything about the story, but it's very interesting how we all interpret and how we all enjoy stories differently, just from our different personality or viewpoint or whatever it may be. We're all so different that it's whatever works for you, then that's do your thing.
Yeah, it's fun though. I mean, I'm just so like I have to have things in order, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm predicting that you're not going to start reading the endings either before you get there.
No, yeah, no. So I oftentimes even avoid the synopsis just because I don't want to know anything. I just want to know just very general. This is a book about the chosen one, and it's a coming of age fantasy story. Okay.
Yeah. That's okay. Even that you could consider a spoiler.
Yeah. It's one of the things. Yeah. So you have to be careful, and some people love spoiler reviews. There are those people who don't care about spoilers, and some people are really very picky about them. So it's a tough line. It's tough to balance
it is really tough.
How much do you say?
Yeah, because one person's just information is another person's spoiler. And I figure if something is written on the back of the book, it's fair game for me to talk about in my review, even if it's a non-spoiler review. But not everyone would agree with that. Not everyone would agree, I think. And there are people who watch some of my videos who say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to watch any reviews because I just don't want to be spoiled about anything. So yeah, I mean, to me, I'm total respect for that, no problem. But I feel like that's kind of one extreme, right?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I recently read The Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark.
Okay.
And I read the synopsis, and there's something in the synopsis. And when I read the book, I thought, I wish I hadn't read that synopsis because I'd be surprised when this happens. I thought I wish I hadn't read it. But so you're right. Everyone has a different scale of what's a spoiler, what isn't a spoiler, what's safe to say. So yeah, it's tough to, as a reviewer, as someone who talks about this kind of material, like how do you present it, in what way, or do you have to warn everyone before you say this is a story about it? Is this a coming of age story? Is that too much for some people? So it's a tough, it's interesting. I think people find the reviewers that present it the way that they enjoy, and they stick with them. So yeah.
No, I mean, it is very the non-spoiler review or even non-spoiler discussion. Because what I've done with AP is we've divided up our Malazan talks, where the non-spoiler one is on my channel and the spoiler one is on his channel. And the non-spoiler, it's always shorter than the spoiler one, and we always have to. It's actually much harder to plan the non-spoiler one than it is to plan the spoiler one, because with the spoiler one you just go, oh, this part was cool, I do find, though, interestingly, that the non-spoiler one helps to organize the spoiler one in a way, because when we do the non-spoiler talk, it's like, okay, what are the themes that we can talk about in a general way without giving away? Because people seem to be okay when you talk about themes in a general way. Like, this theme is present in the story, right? The theme of whatever, imperialism is here.
Mhm.
And that's, I don't know too many people who mind hearing, okay, this theme is present. And it's interesting what Erickson does with it here in a way that I haven't seen before. And he seems to be questioning this trope, right? Without, that's okay, right? That's not a spoiler. That's what we have to do to make an interesting non-spoiler. Like you said, there's an art to doing that. It's tricky, but
It is very tricky, and themes are very interesting. Sometimes themes are harder to kind of break down and to present in certain ways. And Joanna does a great job
oh yes,
with her reviews. I mean, it's I learned so much from all of her reviews, and whenever she has one, because she breaks down themes so well
yeah,
that I wish I could do that too. So I try to be better and to watch and see how she presents ideas and how she presents different themes. And
yeah,
I can watch her reviews and not feel like I've been spoiled on anything because it's just themes. So at least I have an idea
yep.
of what's
You
in the
can
book.
do something slightly similar by talking about the character work, without being specific. You can say, or the narrative perspective, or the setting or symbolism, although you have to be careful. You don't want to be too specific there either. But yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, it is tricky. Yeah.
Yeah. So much easier to just gush and spoil away, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't really have to think too much about it. You just go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I've slipped a couple times in non-spoiler talks where I thought afterwards, oh, should I have said that? Somebody's going to be upset with me. But I guess it's worth it, the risk, right? For what we gain from the conversations.
I think so. Yeah, I think the people who do consider really small bits of detail a spoiler, I think most of them are pretty understanding that once in a while it's going to happen. And if you want to avoid spoilers altogether, then just don't watch anything and just read the book or absorb the material and then come back and watch it after. If you're that concerned about it, then just avoid it.
Yeah. So you're reading R. Scott Baker, you're reading Ken Liu. What else are you excited about? What's on the horizon?
Oh wow. Let me see what else. We're reading V for Vendetta this week too.
Okay.
Yeah, Alan Moore. We read Watchmen a couple of weeks ago, and that's been really great.
Yep.
Also plan to read there's so many books that want to get into, but I'm still reading the Expanse series with the group. We're reading the fourth book will be this month. We're reading what else we're reading. I wanted to get to I don't know, I'm forgetting all the names, but the Trials of Ashmouth.
Okay.
Reading that. I want to read, was it Heart of Darkness or Age of Darkness? It's one of the books that Patrick has raved about recently.
Probably Age, because Heart of Darkness is a classic by Joseph Conrad.
Yeah.
I would
I think
guess
I'm getting my movies mixed up.
Yeah.
Age of Darkness.
Or is it Sons of Darkness? Is that what you're talking about? The one that is from the
Gurev Mohanty.
Yeah, Sons of Darkness. Yeah, I have that, and I'm gonna read it myself. Yeah, I'm gonna read it hopefully in October. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I plan to read it in October too. So
cool. Nice. Yeah.
Reading that and reading Trials of Ashmouth.
Okay.
I'm going to read that one. The Shauna Lawless book. I hope to get to that one.
I want to read that too so much. I heard Mark Lawrence talk about it. I heard the Gwynn brothers talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I have to read that too. Yeah.
Yeah. There's just so many. The Children of Gods and Fighting Men.
Yep. That's
the name
of
it. Yeah. I'm really bad about
there's a lot of Irish Celtic mythology in that one. Yeah. Which is really cool for me. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many great books out there that it's hard to keep up.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. What about the Malazan Book of the Fallen? Is that to read on hiatus now, or what's going on with that? I know we got to the third book, right? Memories of Ice. We had our chat about that. Yeah.
I know Yolene had a pretty bad reading slump there, where she just needed a break. So we took a break, and I hope to start the fourth book and do like a chapter by chapter, or even like a book by book breakdown with that one, just because I've learned so much going slower with Prince of Nothing that I think it would really benefit with a book like Malazan with that series. So I plan to get back into it probably this month and start doing like a book by book slowing down, taking my time, and just not, not worrying about finishing it in a month or 2 months even. Sometimes it,
Oh, I think that's smart.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's,
No,
yeah.
that's smart. That's similar to, I was talking to Murphy Napier the
Mhm.
other day, and she's taking a similar approach. She's spacing it out, and says, these books, I love them, but they take a big toll on me. There's a big emotional toll, and there's, they require a serious amount of engagement. And so I'm just going to space them out. That's what works. Whatever works for people, right? So
Yeah. I wish I could be one of those people who read a book a day and
I
can
can't.
absorb it and to
Yeah.
understand it and to, but I can't. That's just too much for me. I want
Yeah.
to, you know, want to take it all in and not miss out on anything that,
Yeah.
was in front of us.
Yeah, well, by Booktube standards, I think I probably fall on the spectrum of, like people like whoever who reads like 300 books a year, and then there are people who read. I probably fall more like 50-ish books a year myself for this. I have to read for my job. My day job is a lot of reading, and I also
Mhm.
write, and so for this, I can only handle about 50 books a year. So yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah. With everything
Yeah.
else you have going on, and it's very time consuming. How is your book coming along, by the way?
Oh, wow. So I am now editing book 3 after I got some really very helpful comments from AP. I engaged him as an editor.
Mm.
And he's really good at that. So I'm tweaking book 3, which was pretty much a done deal, but now I'm going back and changing certain things, and I think making some really nice improvements that have me excited. And as far as the publishing endeavor goes, I haven't heard a word from any publisher yet. So I understand that's a process that takes a lot of time these days because of the
Mm.
pandemic. That it usually takes months now between the time that an agent does the submissions and the time that you hear back from an editor at a publishing house. Apparently, it takes like at least 3 months or something
Yeah.
often. So I don't know. So it hasn't been 3 months yet. So I'm waiting for that. And then we'll visit. I've been communicating with my agent, and of course he would tell me if there was any good news, obviously. But if it turns out that no publisher wants to publish my trilogy, then I'm going to self-publish. That's just, I knew that from the beginning, but
Mm.
and that's fine. We talked about, I mean, um, self-publishing being a more and more viable means of getting your story out there. And I believe that there are examples of people who have self-published, who have created stories that are as good as traditionally published books, in some cases even better. Now, it's true, I still believe that there's a lot to be gained from traditional. Obviously, I wouldn't be trying to publish traditionally otherwise, but you get the benefit of a professional editor helping you make your story even better. So that to me was something that I was interested in doing. But I've also already engaged a professional editor, so a developmental editor who's brilliant. And I had my agents, give me lots of great feedback as well. So I've had the opportunity to have some really excellent feedback on these books. So I feel good about that. The other thing, though, that obviously a bigger publisher can do that somebody who doesn't have that means is to market the books, right? To get the word out about the books. So most of us don't have that loud of a megaphone to, get our stories out there. So, but I'm prepared to put on a marketing hat if I have to, and try to get the word out about my books, and we'll see. The other benefit, and Richard Nell has talked about this a lot, the benefit, sort of the flip side of I guess of having a professional editor help you make your story better. The flip side of that is creative freedom. Obviously, if you're
Yeah.
somebody who's like, I don't know if that advice is really good for my story. And yeah, maybe I would sell more books if I did it that way, but I really want this for my story. And you can do that, if you self-publish. It's up to you as the writer. You have more creative freedom. And that, I have to confess, is an appealing idea too. So plus, there's the whole how much money do you make on a sale factor. So as you know, traditionally published books, the author gets like 7% of the sale or something like that. 7-10%. I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I've been reading. Whereas if you're self-publishing, it's more like 70%, right? So I have to sell 10 times as many books to make as much money if I go with a traditional publisher. So there are lots of pros and cons there. And I think we're in a period now where people don't care if the book they're reading was self-published or traditionally published too much. Would you agree with that?
I think for the most part, I think the stigma behind self-publishing is going away because there's so many great books that people are discovering.
Yeah.
So I think that is going away. I think there is a small group of people who still think self-published that must not be any good, but I think that's slowly fading away. I think people are starting to realize how many great stories are being told self-published. But it must be there must be a weird decision to make to either choose creative freedom and take on that marketing hat and take on all those different roles, or to listen to an editor when you do, well, am I making the right decision even if I don't see it now, or are they seeing something that I don't see?
Yeah.
That must be a little nerve-wracking as a creator.
Yeah. Well, the truth is, I'm a strong believer in editing, and I'm a strong believer in having someone who knows stories well edit your book. I know it's a huge expense for an indie or a self-published author to have to go out there and pay. It's very expensive, to the tune of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
So, but if you can do that, you're going to improve your story. I think 99% of the time, it's going to result in a better, stronger story. And you have to weigh that. Is it worth it? Am I going to be able to make enough back to justify this expense? It's tough because, you're also thinking about, I need a nice cover, because people do judge books by their covers, right?
Yeah.
So there are all these things you think, oh my goodness. And it is a passion project to a great degree. If you're a self-publishing author, I think you might not make the money back if you pay a professional editor and you pay an artist and someone to do the layout and all that other stuff. And you might not, so, there it is. But that's a risk, that you're going to take.
Yeah,
I do think.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh no, if you do choose a traditional publishing route, you do get paid less, but your book could be available to more people.
Yes,
so
it will be.
Yeah.
They have the ability, although even then there's a risk, because what happens, and it's understandable, they want to make money. And I think what often happens, at least I've heard what happens in the traditional publishing world is, let's say a publisher puts out 20 fantasy books in a year. And early on, they see one or two of them are doing a little bit better than the others. So what they'll do then is put everything behind those one or two books, make their money there, and cut their losses on the others. So you're an author who's been published by a pretty decent company, but they're doing nothing to market your book. They're letting it die, which is honestly, for me, I feel like that's a terrible fate for a book that somebody's put so much into. But I think it's a pretty common story. We just don't hear about it because you never hear about those books, right?
Yeah. And I wonder if you are one of those people who has their book published and the publisher just kind of cuts their losses and slowly lets your book die on the vine. Do you still own the IP? If is it still something you can?
I don't know about the legalities of it, or you can buy that back or what, but you can still obviously self-market. In fact, I think more and more publishers are telling authors, you need to go out there and market your book, even if you're traditionally published. So even then you have to put on a marketing hat and get out there. They want all their authors to have, Twitter accounts and this and that and the other, and you have to get out there and be social on social media and etc. So if you're an author in that position, you can still, but guess what? You're still only going to make 7% of each sale. Whereas if you had self-published and you're doing all that work, you're going to make 70% of each sale.
Yeah.
So that's why I say it would be a kind of awful position to be in. And I don't know if you, at that point you can get the rights back and just, do it on your own entirely.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, it's a lot to weigh. It's a lot to consider for somebody who just wants to write beautiful stories.
Yeah. It seems like a whole nother, it seems like writing the book is the easy part. It's what comes after is the hard part.
Yeah. Which is, writing a good book is by no means easy. I've been working on my trilogy for like 18 years. And I've loved every moment of writing it, but it's not something you're going to do to get rich.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But now there's lots of we talked with Scott Drakeford and Cassie Sanchez, but by the time people are watching this last week, but they were talking about how more and more publishers are picking up self-published books that are already successful and just hooking their horses to that wagon and just pulling it along, and it's already the buzz has already been created, and so they kind of handpick.
Seems like it's cheating in a way, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That said, I think 99% of us, let's say we self-publish a book and it does really enough to get the attention of the traditional publishers and they show up with a contract, most authors are going to say yay and sign that contract, I would guess. Now there are some people who are going to say no, actually I like my creative freedom. I feel like I'm doing a decent enough job marketing my own books, and I feel like I like earning 70% on each sale as opposed to 7%. So I think I'm going to just stick with what I'm doing. I feel like there are going to be more authors who are going to make that decision in the future. I might be wrong, but
yeah,
we're still at a point, I think, where the majority of us would go for it, would say, if approached by a traditional publisher, would say, yeah, please,
Yeah. There are success stories like Will White. His series is massively successful. I also hear about authors who are traditionally published that the publisher will come to them and say, I know you planned for 4 books, but you need to wrap it up in 3, or you planned for 5 books, you need to wrap it up in 3.
Yeah.
So they have to condense. So that's the give and take there.
Yeah, and a lot depends on how much clout you have, of course, as an author. I doubt that they'd be able to do that to Stephen King or something.
I'm waiting for him to self-publish a book. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Well, we had Brandon Sanderson's sort of very successful. Is it self-publishing? I guess it kind of is, right?
I guess it would be his Kickstarter. I guess it would be
Kickstarter. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of sort of self-publishing, really. It's just a slightly different way to go about it, where you get your customers to pay before they get the product, I guess, right? I mean,
you get to support the creator and hopefully keep them creating. That may be something more and more people go to now too, is after they have kind of a reputation and they have a reader base, they can kind of help out with that upfront costs with the editors and the covers and that whole process. So it's great if people can do it.
Yeah, I don't know how viable it'll be for most people, but because most people will not have the support that Brandon Sanderson has, right? Very few people are going to have that kind of clout. So, but it's interesting. I do find it interesting that we're in a bit of a Wild West period here for the publishing, where there's different kinds of publishing. There's hybrid publishing and there's indie presses and pure self-publishing. And now there's this Kickstarter stuff that people are excited about. And of course, traditional publishing. And so there's lots of different models out there. And it's, I feel like we're in an era when none of these other things other than traditional publishing has ever been looked at as truly viable. And now that's changed.
The book industry reminds me of what the music industry was in the late 90s with digital music kind of coming up, and the music industry was very slow to react to it. And I think that's what's happening.
It went belly up for the most part. Yeah.
So I think for the most part, it's big companies or big industries like that are very slow. They're like a big lumbering idiot, and it takes them a while to react and to move and to adapt. Because you're just so used to doing things a certain way that they have to evolve and adapt to the new landscape. So it'll just take a little bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, one sign that traditional publishing is catching on a little bit is, like you mentioned, they are picking up more self-published authors who've been successful, which feels like a bit of a cheat, but okay. I mean, that's smart business, I guess. Smart business. And more people are going to say, okay, I'm going to try self-publishing first and see if I can get them to be interested that way, just great, but yeah, we'll see. Things are in flux, definitely.
Yeah, well, it's zero risk for them if there's a book that's been
Yeah,
self-published and it already has fans of the book and people are buying it, and the
right.
author has followers on social media and they interact, then it's just pluck them out and
Yeah.
go. There's no risk for them. But yeah, it's, and there's also things like the SFBPO, self-published fantasy. I always get the acronym wrong, but it's such a great
SPFBO. Yeah, right.
yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Self-published fantasy
blog off.
blog off or something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, it's the thing that Mark Lawrence started, right?
Yeah, that's fantastic. And to have so many people volunteer and spend their time and effort just to read books and review them, and to give these books a chance that may not have gotten a chance before, isn't it? It's just wonderful to have this huge group of people do something like that, and you see so many great books being discovered, even if they don't even get past the first stage, they still get attention, and people will go check it out. So it's great to, authors have that option too. So that, and that also the traditional publishing houses also pluck people out of that competition out too when they see them
They're
gaining steam.
noticing. Yeah, they're definitely noticing. But I do have to wonder, when are the authors going to say, I think this might not be a good deal. Yes, I want the prestige, I want the pat on the back that I'm a successful enough author that a real publisher put my books out. That feels great. But at what point, if you're a successful self-published author, do you say, I'm going to stick with the self-publishing because I can make more on each sale, and I think I can, they won't be able to make up the difference. I wonder when we're going to get to that point, or if we will.
I think we will. I think it's once you put all the time and effort into gaining traction as a self-published author, and you have a reader base, and you have attention in your book, and people are buying it and enjoying it and asking you for the next book, do you really want to hand that off to someone else and go from 70% to 7%? I mean,
that's what it is.
That's a tough one, and it might work for some people if you can work out the right deal. But it's really interesting, really tough decision.
Yeah, well, and then like I said before, I get it, because there are people who work in the publishing industry. They love stories too. There are people who know, for the most part, what they're doing, and they're very good at making stories better, and marketing them in a way that they can have great success. So yeah, they want to put out great stories too. But it's just, we're all kind of caught up in this big system here, and trying to make the best of it, I think. So.
Yeah, it's a bit, it's a business, so they have to make the right. They may enjoy a story, but it may not be the right time for a story.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, in the meantime, though, I think you're doing great work, putting a spotlight on the self-published and indie books, and I do my little bit here, try to once a month. That's where I think we do some good, by having these platforms and helping people out, particularly when they're great stories. They're great stories that really deserve the attention. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Well, anything else that you wanted to talk about while we're here, Steve?
No, I just wanted to say thank you. It's weird being on the other side. I'm usually in your position, so it's very, very strange answering questions instead of asking them. So, but thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I really, like I said from the beginning, I have a ton of respect for you. And I feel very privileged to call myself your friend, and to get to know you on this really this community is fantastic. And I think you do a lot for this community. So this is a tiny, tiny thing, little gesture. And I want everybody to go check out your channel, Steve Talks Books, and see some of the wonderful content that Steve has there. He does, just like I said from the beginning, more than anyone else I know of for the self-publishing world. And I think it's just fantastic. But you also read some traditionally published books too. I know you're a First Law fan, for example, right? Which, yeah, has you in my good books too. I love First Law. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some other traditional stuff on your channel as well. Yeah. But the conversations are just fantastic on Steve Talks Books. So everybody go check it out. And thank you so much, Steve, for being here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
All right, everybody, until next time.